I like to think that for each new Counter-Strike 2 map we get, that it focuses on a new graphical feature of some kind. But the maps we just received, being Ancient and Anubis, don't seem to have any obvious new features. I noticed small things like how every bit of foliage now moves, whereas a lot in CSGO remained entirely static. But for the most part, it seems like Valve is happy just bringing two of the most beautiful maps from CSGO up to CS2's lighting standards, along with many small graphical tweaks and variations on the new water shaders to better suit these new locations. Anubis is a unique map in that it's one that Valve bought from the community. This shouldn't matter too much, but it means that we can't interpret changes to it in quite the same way. It isn't like Cache, which Evan Pone remains in control of. This is Valve taking over from somebody else's original work, and so while I would assume many changes are done to improve it, some may just be done because Valve wants to change it, similar to how a woman insists on changing the look of a perfectly functional room, often at great cost and time expense, whereas I wouldn't expect Valve to make such changes to the maps that they had made originally. Even when Ancient was first released, Valve probably made it with CS2 in mind, so I'd expect fewer and more subtle changes to that map than this one, which was made by somebody else and probably wasn't made with CS2 in mind. And one of the changes that Valve has made to this map is to make the 3D skybox look bigger, much bigger. Some of this has been done using superficial tricks, like to remove the distant grass and to shrink the trees down to about half their former size, which immediately makes the place feel bigger. A bunch of boats have been added to the water, which helps remove any denial about the scale of denial. There's even one that's been added here, which I hope they keep. It's like a land shark or something. They've removed some of the blockier details on the pyramids and changed the sand dune texture. And there's more haze, making it harder to see everything. For all the times I've praised this game for getting more detail, I'd be a hypocrite not to point out that this CS2 version now has objectively less detail than before. Not necessarily worse looking, just less detail. But I'll let those scallywags at Valve away with this, because they've lavished genuine, new, extra detail on these distant mountains here. And I love mountains. Who doesn't? They look a long way away, don't they? Complete with beautiful atmospheric haze and everything. And this is even more impressive if we look the other way up the Nile, with some of them being so far away that the CS2 engine can't even light them, even when they're in the 3D skybox, where everything's 16 times smaller. It really seems like overkill for it to be this far away, especially when you can't even see these bits too easily from the level. But if I stand right here at T-spawn and peer through this archway, there it is. This is one of the most distant 3D things ever rendered in Counter-Strike. And while we're on the topic of 3D skyboxes, I guess one new feature Anubis sports is distant skybox water, and a smooth looking transition between that and the levels water. Such a transition was always hard to do in CSGO. Here it was on Lake, here it is on Danger Zone's Sirocco, and here it was on the old Anubis. You can make the transition look close, but it's always going to look a bit different. And in CS2, it's still going to look a bit different, but now they've got a new trick to help mask this transition further. It helps if I show what this transition looks like in the 3D skybox first, because here we can see an example of the water fading into nothing, which makes the transition look easier to see. Valve has specified coordinates for this water to fade out at. It doesn't smoothly fade out, instead it uses this rather irritating set pattern of pixels to gradually get drawn less and less. You'll notice this trick used for other things in CS2, especially at lower graphic settings, and I hate it. And even when the water is supposed to have fully faded out here, you can still see a stray water pixel here and there, even miles away. Disgusting. And this same fade out effect is used between the water in the level and the stuff in the skybox. And here the effect works much better, making it almost impossible to spot where the level actually ends. From the playable space, at least. So this is a great example of how CS2 has got a new feature to smooth over an abrupt transition issue that many mappers struggled with in CS for the best part of 20 years. It matters to me because you have no idea how many hours I spent trying to make the transition on my island domination map in Counter-Strike CS look seamless. But there is one suggestion I'll make to improve this water further, and that's for Valve to remove this bit of surface scum, because it's the obvious bit in a repeating surface pattern. And another fun thing I noticed, and probably why the shadows in-game don't quite line up with the sun in the sky, Valve please fix, is because it isn't a sun. It's only a model. An illusion! They've painted it onto the sky in the 3D skybox, and it looks utterly ridiculous. Perhaps it's to keep it looking higher res than whatever low-res skybox image they're using around it. I call this the flat sun theory. How does this happen? I plan a quick video showing the two new maps, and then 3 days later I'm left with 4 minutes talking about skyboxes, an extra playtime on a map I made from 2007. So on to the bit you actually want to know about. Maybe. Is the outdoor lighting in CS2 overexposed? Does it make every shadow and shiny surface look a bit too pretty? Probably. But damn, before and afters show how ugly CSGO's lighting could be. Flat. Cartoony. Shit. The new CS2 lighting really shines, often literally, blessing the outdoor areas in a warm yellow glow and the indoors with a harsh white one. And there are some truly beautiful spots showcasing both. It's a real colour spectacle. I still can't quite explain how or why PBR materials look so good when compared with the more primitive shaders that we had in Source 1. But for a visual example of why it looks better, this room is perfect. These stones shine. The wood shines. Everything shines. Especially this golden ceiling. But it's not just the shininess, it's also the way the yellow lighting from here and what I'm going to say is blue lighting from here interacts with one another, creating such a smooth, beautiful gradient between the two colours across this floor, and how the various crooked planks and angled fences all display colours depending on what lighting should be hitting them. Even this bit under the floor that you'll never see, it's like a disco treat for the eyes. I would have said that all these things have been placed just to show off Source 2's lighting, but they haven't been. Everything was placed exactly like this already in CSGO. It just looked brown and miserable. A simple lighting overhaul has transformed this from being an ugly room that you never paid attention to into being one of the most gorgeous spots on the entire map. And just like with the pyramids outside, all of the former sticky out bricks in this area have been removed. There's actually less detail here than there was before, fewer polygons to tax your graphics card with. But to state the obvious, that doesn't mean it now looks worse, or runs faster. And just around the corner from this is this area, showing how strong Source 2's bounce lighting can be, but in a good way. Look at the shadow behind this crate. The floor is casting a literal shadow up the side of the wall here. It's why everything in the shade has an unearthly glow to it, because it's being lit from an angle that you're not used to seeing in real life. Valve, please fix. Or should they? I took a trip to Jordan, to the not so lost nor secret place called Petra. This is one of the few places in the world that I'd say manages to be better in real life than you'd hope it would be. Here, bullet decal fade out length is measured in centuries, and surrounding it is one of those 1.6 era 2D skyboxes full of impossibly craggy mountains, as far as the eye can see. And no matter when you visit, there are many examples in and around the numerous valleys, gullies, crags and ruins where sun will pour through a crack and will illuminate the entire place with its pleasantly warm, powerful glow, even from beneath. Look, just here. Undeniable proof that, even on a hot sunny day, stuff can still be lit from beneath. How considerate of them to carve all this out thousands of years ago, just so I can draw parallels between it and Source 2.
Look how green it is.
So green, it's like...
The new cache.
New cache, oh yeah, it is.
Thanks, ancient people. Now, time to get home before another major Counter-Strike update lands. And you can shoot this glass too. It's a similar effect to the one seen on Office, only the glass on this map remains transparent and breaks into fewer pieces. I actually prefer it. But it is a shame that the glass quickly disappears after the first bounce. Still, it's satisfying enough that I expect CTs to develop atrocious compulsive habits of shooting these areas as they rush past it on the way to middle, in the hope that it'll give them luck in the upcoming battle. But it won't. And running straight across the middle is this beautifully blue canal, featuring water caustics both underneath and around the watery areas. You'll also spot a bunch of super wet looking surfaces around the canal, which I think looks just as gorgeous, though I'm unsure of how it remains looking this wet in the burning sunlight. I also have no idea how this water got around the monument on Bombsite B. Leave your suggestions in the comment section below. I'm guessing it's where all this water is teleported to once it's collected in this trough, since there's nowhere else for it to go. But I don't want to complain too much, since it adds so much to the visuals with so little performance impact. For the most part, at least. This corner of Bombsite A did have waterfalls already, but now there's a 2-layer pool with a little waterfall running down the middle. There's even a shrubbery. I noticed a weird blue line down the side of this column, and if I no-clip through the wall, then you can see it's being lit indirectly by the ambient lighting from outside. See? Even when Source 2 gets things wrong, it still looks beautiful. Returning to the water caustics in this corner, if you like this sort of thing, then I can recommend Crysis 3, which attempted to do this effect in real time. I'm not sure how accurately it did it, but I commend it for trying. I never thought I'd be comparing Counter-Strike to this game, let alone saying that I think that Counter-Strike's graphics are better than Crysis's are. Yet here we are. Both games even model your character's legs and stuff. Okay, I really need to stop getting distracted and actually finish this video because it's been a week since the update and you're all waiting patiently. I'll just kill this guy first. And I'll tell you what, forget all those fancy benchmarking programs and demos. Simply shove your face up to the ripples at the base of these waterfalls and it gets my GeForce 4090 down below 90 FPS. At 4K. Carrying on this weird tour around the map, I took a detour through here to appreciate how complete this unplayable space looks. You've got a whole canal section here, another ancient statue just chilling by the side of the road, and this floating tree here which you actually can't see as floating from the playable space. Like, even if you stood here and boost on top of another player's head, the floating tree's base is so perfectly aligned with this stone here that I can't help but believe that the mappers must have prepared for this exact situation where I analyse for these sorts of things. The attention to detail is simply incredible. And then, beyond this non-playable space, is another, even further away, and even less playable space, featuring a car. What a time to be alive. I've mentioned before how CSGO was incapable of the colour red. Everything in that game was some drab orangey colour. But in CS2 they've embraced that by making the shutters and stone surfaces more orangey brown than ever before. But don't worry, there are still some garishly red surfaces, like these street signs here, these flowers, which must be wearing lipstick or something, and the B logo, which is so damn red, I worry that YouTube's going to age restrict this video. And at T-Spawn, I notice a banging music track playing from this doorway. You might ask who cares, but that's kind of rich given that you've watched me talk about lighting for 10 minutes. I care because some of the older maps, especially Italy, Inferno and the source versions of Dust, feature these kinds of spots and tracks, which I still remember fondly almost 20 years later. So you better memorise this track. You might be showing it to your children someday. And then back to the canals again, and to the only gameplay change that's worth covering. The boat here has been removed and the bridge has been adjusted slightly. See, Source 2 version of Anubis has something for everybody, but especially for me. I don't know what Valve is going to do with CSGO once CS2 comes out. I hope it remains accessible and playable, but just in case it isn't, here are some close-up comparisons of the water between the two versions, just to show you why you'll never want to return to CSGO version of this map ever again. So I was going to cover Ancient in this video as well, but I got so brutally sidetracked by pointless stuff that I'll just have to wait. Have fun